Hello and welcome to Warcraft Daily for today, the 8th of December 2013. Now, while this is the recap, the first segment will just contain some talk about the channel. I might do a full video on it at some point, but yeah, it's probably worth listening to for everyone. But in the actual recap, we'll be talking about the movie stuff, a summary of all the important blue activity from the week, a little bit of talk about the Iron Skyreaver, and then finally the Coronal Spire and how that could link to Karazhan. So first of all, let's just talk about the channel for a minute. Now, the last week and this week, you've probably noticed that, well, I guess things have just not been as interesting and varied as I suppose you want and as I want. And the reason for that is because loads of projects and shit going on at university, and I think I've mentioned this in passing a few times, but I actually just want to devote a few minutes or whatever to it so I can, just give a full explanation and say, don't worry, the channel's not going to shit, stuff's going to go back to normal and get better. So pretty much I am going to keep Warcraft Daily going every single day throughout the next week and a half, which is really just the time period where I've got loads of projects in, and I'll be in full crunch mode for pretty much the whole week, which should be fun. But yeah, Warcraft Daily will still be a thing. I'm trying to pre-record as much as I can this weekend. I have 3 episodes of Hearthstone and a Northrend vlog, but it will probably go up today. It's talking about some of the new changes that are going on with YouTube with content creators that are really quite problematic. They probably won't hit me massively hard, but they are definitely going to hit some of the smaller guys, so I think it's worth talking about. So, yeah, let's talk just a little bit quickly about things going on in the future. So, in terms of plans, I want not to... Okay, World of Warcraft's always the main thing, and I will never be taking away from World of Warcraft content, but I like the idea of doing a kind of a game spotlight, so if there's a new game I'm playing, and maybe it's... I know, I can just do a one-off video on a game because I think it's cool and I should let people know. And the nice thing about just calling it a spotlight is I can do spotlight, what the game is, and then whether it's a review or a first impression or something like that. I just think that would be cool because I do play more than just World of Warcraft, and game design and that sort of thing is something that's of interest to me, obviously, because it's kind of tied into my degree. While it's a programming degree, design is obviously something you're going to need if you're going to be successful. So yeah, don't worry, it's never going to take away from World of Warcraft, but I don't know, if like some new indie game comes out, I might just do a quick little video on that. Now that, of course, does depend on some of the new YouTube policies that are coming in not being ridiculous, so that maybe is the sort of thing I'll hold off until I see what's going on in that regard. See the Northrend vlog for more information. So there's that. I also want in the future to do PvP. This will probably be on my warrior, and I know there are loads of YouTubers who do PvP as a warrior, but I'm not really competing with them, and I don't want to. They're all really good at what they do, and I'm completely new to PvP. So it's more just going to be a fun thing to add a little bit of variation to the channel. I know that I'm essentially missing out on one half of the game. Well, probably not a half in terms of content, but in terms of gameplay, I'd say nearly, yeah, half. So I wanted to get into more PvP, and after this fortnight is over or whatever, I'll be getting back in the swing of things with lore videos. Oh yeah, also Q&As may come next week. I do have a list, by the way, if, like, your questions... First time they're asked in the comments, I put them right on the list. So yeah, it's not like I forget questions from an older video. Everything's just on a Word document. Anyway, let's actually move into the news and the stuff that's probably interesting to you. So the movie, we have some confirmed actors. They are Ben Foster, Rob Kaczynski, Toby Kebbell, Travis Fimmel, Paula Patton, and perhaps Dominic Cooper. A few days ago they said they were in the final stages of negotiations, and it doesn't seem like much has changed since then. But if they're in the final stages, it probably means that unless Dominic Cooper is hit by a bus or something like that, we're going to get him in the movie. So really, what's the bottom line of these actors? Well, I haven't seen much of any of them personally because I'm not a giant TV person, I'm not a giant movie person, but from everything I've gathered, they're all very good. Essentially. Okay, some of them, because they haven't had their giant break, or, their massive uber stardom thing, maybe they have been in the odd crappy movie, but you know what, so have a lot of actors. A lot of actors have been in their fair share of good and bad, and from what I've looked at their peak performances, all of these actors have really, they've really put out a very good performance, and I think that Duncan Jones is someone who works very well with actors anyway, so honestly I'm very happy with the cast. The one guy who I probably do know a little bit more about is Travis Fimmel. He plays the main character in Vikings, and apparently he's done a great job, and Vikings is a very good show. I've seen a little bit of one episode, but I plan on box setting the whole thing quite soon once I get the time. Yeah, I think this is all good. It's nice having a cast that's... Okay, it's definitely not unknowns. These are all people that we have seen in movies, but... It's a cast that's not really... It doesn't contain Colin Farrell or some big, giant name that everyone's gonna be like, oh, look. Not that, like, fucking George Clooney would be an orc or something. Probably a very handsome orc, to be fair, but... what this means is that they're bringing the character into the movie, not the actor. So it's not like when you see Mission Impossible... You don't care about the main character, you just know he's Tom Cruise, and, of course, if you're like me, because of that, it probably means you don't enjoy the movie as much, because it's bloody Tom Cruise. So yeah, this is good. Much like the way, take pre-Lord of the Rings, most of the characters weren't that well known. Frodo and Sam were washed up or not Frodo and Sam, oh my god, Elijah Wood and, oh, your man. It's funny, like, I prefer Sam's actor to Elijah Wood, shit, whatever, the two of them were washed up child actors, then they go in Lord of the Rings. So yeah, it's probably nice having this cast. I just think it'll be great. Like, say Game of Thrones. It's okay, there's some big names, but a lot of people, like, say, the guy who plays Jon, the guy who plays Robb, plays Arya, they kind of came from not being pre-existing actors that are ultra famous, that people brought the actor with them into the movie. All you have is the character, and I think that is what's going to work perfect for the Warcraft movie, because it's not trying to be a popcorn action flick, it's trying to be dark and gritty. And when something's trying to be dark and gritty, what matters the most is you don't bring the actors in. It's funny, actually, I really enjoyed Gravity, and it's weird because I've never really, this sounds crazy, I've never really seen a movie by George Clooney or, oh, I've forgotten her name. Oh, no. The woman in Gravity who acts fantastically. I've never seen either of, like, I've never really seen much of either of their work. Which probably meant that I enjoyed the movie more than fans of those actors, because all I saw was their really good performances. So yeah, overall, movie, great sort of direction it's going in my opinion. Next, let's talk about the blues. So, first of all, Draenor flight points. They said that they are quite aware that flight points are a source of contention when people have flying removed. And of course, with there being no flying until patch 6.1, it's very, very important that flight points are, okay, not perfect, because it's very hard to get perfect, but at least there's nothing that makes ridiculous amounts of no sense. Now, that was an awful English sentence, I can't even speak, but whatever. It's very important that flight points make sense, and they are often very frustrating because, well, a flight point takes 10 minutes, then you just alt-tab, there's no fun gameplay there, it's just a pain in the arse. So yeah, they said they're going to make sure that that is a thing that they keep their eyes on, and also if you do have any issues with that, then you should make a post in the forums or something that alerts them to the issue. Now you may think, well, surely they'll be able to catch any problems. I guess when you think about it, say in Kalimdor, right, there's probably at least 50 or 60 different flight points. Now that's like 60 times 60, how many, let's see, 60 times 60, and that's 3,600, yeah? Yeah, of course. I should be able to mental maths that. Well, I did. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, that's 3,600 different combinations. So, obviously, that means that it's very hard to catch all of them. And any players who can find a problem, you should definitely tell them, because they will probably go and fix it. Now, next, they said they have an announcement to make for crafting soon. But from what we've heard before, they've said they're going to be trying to streamline leveling and just make the profession make a little bit more sense. That's absolutely what I think they will do. I'd say there will be leveling catch-up mechanics added for quite a lot of different crafting professions. That's nice, and I've went into this in more detail previously, but essentially it just means that a lot of the annoyance of leveling up a profession is gone, and I don't think that annoyance really ever added to gameplay in much regard at all. The only thing that it may, the only thing it may do is make it so that more people do have maxed up professions. So perhaps there might be more competition in the auction house or something like that. But overall, I think it's quite good. Now next, Ghost Crawler. Now next, it's time for a few words on the topic of crowd control. They've said that one of the things they want to do, and this is mainly in regards to PvP, is tone down the amount of crowd control that there is. Right now, there's a bit of an issue where you can get stunned, like just chain stunned, chain CC'd, interrupted. There's so many different things, and one of the issues now is that a lot of it's instant, whereas back in, say, I think one of the examples they said that was back in Wrath, more of that stuff was casted, and there was some times when classes perhaps didn't really have a specific kind of CC, and just in general things were a little bit more diverse instead of lots of classes having the blanket CC and interrupts that they do now. Now the problem is that makes the game Well, okay, CC is very important to PvP, and it's a very important gameplay element. The thing is that it's just too prominent. This is one of the things I personally think when I play PvP, but it's also one of the things that the developers think. And honestly, I've heard a lot of PvP players complain about this issue, where it's no fun when you get chain CC'd for 10 seconds, and there is nothing that you cannot use your own skill to counter that, which is probably a bit of an issue. So that's one problem. I think that overall, as well, burst is probably an issue. At least it was back in, I think, 5.2, 5.3. They may have solved a little bit of that with the resilience change and just some various things. But yeah, burst was an issue where the whole PvP metagame, it didn't really... Okay, unless it's at the very highest level, it wasn't kind of like cumulatively having small victories throughout the match and then winning overall. It was more about, can you time the massive burn of all your cooldowns with your partner's CC? I don't really think that was the most fun way to do things. Next, they talked about mount dazing, and they said it's still going to be a thing. What is mount dazing? It's when you are on your ground mount, you get whacked by a mob, you fall off your mount. The purpose of this is that not only does it make, well, it basically means there's more risk. It means there's more risk when you're traveling through the world, and the good thing about there being more risk is that it's just a compelling part of game design where the player is forced to make decisions. So, do I run through the null camp instead of going around? If I run through, it will be quicker, but I might get dazed, and then if you do get dazed, you're thrown into a position of tension where you need to fight, or else you're just going to die. So yeah, I think overall mount dazing's fine. It's a nice little part of the game design. And another thing is that sometimes it can let you have these nice little victories where you're lazy, you just want to run past something, and you don't get dazed, and woohoo, you've just won. So overall, I think it's one of those things where it's like, people would not necessarily be angry if they took it away. I think people would be happy if they took it away, actually. But then, over time, it would sort of feel like there's a little bit less depth, a little bit less minute-to-minute decision-making, and that would overall be to the detriment of the game. But it would be more the kind of thing where people would be like, well, this isn't as good, but I can't put my finger on it. I think it would be like that. Also for stats, they said that one of the things with stats is that instead of having multiple different sets of armor, and like loads of different reforges the way we have it now, basically if you're a hybrid spec, you will have your main piece of armor, and the main stat on that armor will change depending on your spec. So if you're Holy Paladin, your intellect will turn into strength when you go into rep. That makes perfect sense, right? And the things that will not change, however, is your secondary stats. So if you have your Holy set, and you have your spirit trinkets, and your spirit rings, and that sort of thing, then sure, you'll be able to change into ret, and you'll have armor that works, but you won't have secondary things that works. The reason they've done this is because they still want there to be plenty of different, like, differentiation between the different specs and the stats you want, but they also want to cut down the amount of just chopping and changing and general annoying things that happen, which means that, yeah, I think it's good. Essentially, the way it used to be, you'd have to change like 12 different pieces. Now you'll have to change 3 to 5. But because of the way the tertiary stats work, and sockets, and warforged, there will be a lot more diversity between bits of gear, especially since they're adding some additional secondary stats, like readiness and multi-strike. So overall, I think it's all pretty good stuff. It should make the game a little bit more spiced up and interesting. Also, we have to talk about the Iron Skyreaver. This is a new mount that's coming to the game. It's a 2-headed chimera, which I suppose is just like any other chimera. They all have 2 heads. It's rather cool. It's very Iron Horde styled, as you can see. And initially, a lot of people were thinking, oh, well, this is just the Warlords of Draenor Collector's Edition. Well, on the PTR, it's inside the fucking Blizzard store. Like, you already put the Enchanted Fey Dragon in the game, like, a few weeks ago. Really? You're already sticking things in the store? Okay, this might not happen until Warlords releases, but... I just want, like... Come on. Stop withholding some cool mounts from the game just so you can put them in the store. I think really mounts that are very fitting within the current lore shouldn't be store items. Like the Enchanted Fey Dragon is just from left field, hey, here's a cool thing our artist's made, you can buy it. That's not as bad as, hey, here's something relevant to the lore, you can buy it. Or not relevant to the lore, but sort of fitting in, you know? I'm okay with it being a collector's edition thing. I don't know if I'm okay with the collector's edition mount being purchasable outside of the collector's edition, though. I think the collector's edition is its own little badge of honor, which makes no sense, but whatever. It's its own thing, and the mount should be limited to that. So yes, do you think this should be in the collector's edition? Do you think it should be in the store? And what do you think about things that are relevant to the lore, such as an Iron Horde mount being on the Blizzard store? Personally, I'm not really for it. Now next, and the final thing for the show, is the Coronal Spire. What? Well, on an early preview map for Draenor, there's a thing called the Coronal Spire that is labelled entryway into Draenor. Now the Coronal Spire, what does coronal mean? This is a word that's not commonly used. It means pertaining to time. So it means the spire pertaining to time, which is the way we get into Draenor, and Draenor is an alternate timeline which is in the past. So this all makes sense. Now the thing is, we already have our own Coronal Spire, or spire pertaining to time, the Tower of Karazhan. At the very top, Prince Melcathar is always gloating about how he has access to different times and dimensions, and how time is apparently the fire in which we will burn. Well, this probably means Karazhan is in... Well, no, okay, this isn't confirmed, by the way. This is an old map, but it's certainly, this in combination with what's going on in the PTR, it certainly opens the possibility, at least, that Karazhan is going to be involved with just how the hell do we get to Draenor. Now the weird thing is, we've already been told that the Dark Portal turns red and we go through that, so I'm not really too sure how this will work. But anyway, that's it for today's show. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.